Okay. Hey guys. Gosh, it's been a while. I feel rusty.
Months.
Yeah,
I'm nervous.
Months. I know. I never felt nervous doing this. We're all like, how does the camera work? How does one go on Facebook Live?
Is that okay?
Yeah, that looks good. If you are just now joining us, give us a thumbs up if you can hear us okay, because we're trying out our lapel mics, these fancy lapel mics. Anyway, I'm Kristen Howerton. I blog at a blog called Rage Against the Minivan.
And I'm Paul Martin. I blog at Paula Sophia.
Paul and I are old friends and political junkies, and we come from opposite sides of the aisle. I am a Democratic Socialist.
I am a moderate Republican.
So if you are why are you laughing? You don't know what
changed.
You are anymore.
Yeah, it's all
I know.
changed since I first started saying that.
If I was a Republican, I feel like I would be maybe laughing at that right now too. No offense. I know that though that you don't. I mean, Trump does not represent many in your party. You know what's interesting? Side note, as we jump into this topic, but George Bush has been on the interview circuit this week, and he was on Ellen, and he's just been on a couple other interviews, and it's like, man, I miss that guy.
Right.
Like back when he was the big threat.
Absolutely, and he was such a divisive, and he was a hawk, and he just was. I mean, so
we thought he was just so bad.
And he just seems like.
Like a teddy bear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, if you're just joining us, if you've never watched one of our videos before, Paul and I attempted throughout the election to have a civil debate about politics. And our entire intention in that was to kind of model civil discourse. You can still be friends with someone you disagree with. But if you watched, the spoiler was that we ended up really agreeing on most things because Trump was very distasteful to both of us.
Yeah, he united us, and I was already a moderate, Republican, so I wasn't a far right-wing Republican, and I am one that doesn't hate people on the other side, which is, the partisan climate that we live in now has it such that most Democrats just hate Republicans, and certainly most Republicans hate Democrats, and I've never been one to dislike people because of their beliefs, because their beliefs are complicated, how we come to believe what we believe. And so I've always had more of a generous approach until this election. And until I started seeing people, especially, I'm a Christian friends of mine, supporting the things that Donald Trump stood for. And so we found ourselves super united.
We did. And what's been interesting about this political cycle is I did a similar podcast to the one we were doing 4 years ago at the previous election. And then, we stopped doing the podcast because people are not that interested generally in politics when it's not an election year. Kind of the fervor reaches a fever pitch on Facebook, and everyone's suddenly political. And then, we get a new president and everything kind of dies down. And with most presidents in the past, to be honest, business was as usual, There wasn't a huge, everyone would say like, oh my gosh, the world's ending when, Barack Obama gets into office, and then things were pretty much the same. And that has been true for most presidents, a couple executive orders get signed, but for the most part, life goes on as usual. And what has been so different about this, and we didn't have intentions of continuing this political discourse after the election, it doesn't feel like politics as usual.
No.
And I don't think that we're just saying that because we disliked Trump. I think that they're, objectively, things have really changed since he went into office.
There's so much to talk about. I mean, you have marches with millions of people. That's never happened in my lifetime, or when I was
people did march against Obama, but it was kind of like a, never mind.
Yeah. I mean, there are issues as Christians in the church where Trump has divided, even the evangelical church, that, we'll talk about later. But it's totally uncharted waters. And what's interesting about us, we a lot of times don't even rehearse. We don't know what we're going to talk about. We just get in live and just start.
We never rehearse.
Yeah, we never rehearse. I was trying to pat ourselves on the back. But no, it's good because this is just really what's coming to the top in our hearts and minds. And it's just very clear that it is a completely uncharted time. It seems like every day is a whirlwind of who said what to whom, and I don't know.
Well, what's interesting is, when Trump won, that was a big surprise, and that was the last podcast we did, and we were both a little tipsy by the end and a little just like, what is happening?
I was drunk.
Yeah, I was drunk too. We were drunk. Our audience knew we were drunk. We were being called out for how drunk we were in the comments. But anyway, I came home and India was still awake and she was really invested in the outcome, and I had to explain to her, Trump was president, and then she cried and I was crying, and I did say to her, India, like, tomorrow we're going to wake up and life's going to be the same, and this has happened to people on both sides of the aisle. And I went to bed that night giving myself that pep talk, Kristen. Your side didn't win. Life will go on. It's not going to be, like, there's not going to be demonstrable changes because of the checks and balances inherent in our government. I was really soothing myself with this idea. It's really not going to be as bad as you think. And it has been as bad as I feared. It really has.
Yeah, I mean, there hasn't been, a global crisis, but yes, right. But
did you just see the European Union just denounced visa-free travel for Americans?
Yeah, I mean, it's pandemonium in so many ways.
Yeah.
And the way that travel ban, which I think is a Muslim ban, was rolled out.
Well, okay, wait. We have so much to talk about. Should we go consecutively? Should we try to do that?
Oh, let's just do it the way we do it. Whatever
okay,
comes
let's
to
just
mind.
do it, whatever's important. Well, because I know the Muslim ban for both of us, to me that has probably been so far the most devastating thing that's happened. So yeah, you talk about that.
And it was. I mean, I work for an organization called the Christian Muslim Alliance, and we're very, we have a vision to help, especially Christians, realize that Muslims are normal people. And the way that thing was rolled out, I mean, Trump made a promise during the campaign that he was going to ban Muslims, and he eventually figured out that he couldn't do it full scale.
Right.
He couldn't ban one.
You can't use those words.
Right.
You've got to go around.
And so they found a way to whittle it down to 7 countries, and even that didn't work. Right. The court said no, this isn't going to work. So there's a new, kinder, gentler Muslim ban that's going to be coming out. But I think what's most problematic for me in this, and if you're watching this, if you're a person that thinks it's not a Muslim ban, that it's a travel ban, I mean, you really have to understand that there is virtually no possibility of being murdered by a Muslim refugee. There is basically no possibility of being murdered by a Muslim immigrant. If you look at the statistics, those are not the people that are killing us. And so why this ban? The Middle East accounts for about 40% of the refugees that we take in each year, about 40%. So he's basically saying to that 40%, you can't come over here. Why, if they're no more dangerous? Right? And so it is a definite xenophobic ban against a certain religion.
Well, and especially if you look at, he really, he was specific about Syrian refugees and placing a ban on Syrian refugees. But if the threat is ISIS, who hates ISIS more than Syrian refugees?
Yeah.
I mean, they hate ISIS. Like, ISIS just ruined their lives.
Right.
They're fleeing ISIS.
Yeah.
And we're saying, well, we have a common enemy, but same religions as ISIS, so no.
Yeah.
We don't want you in. It's crazy. And I do think, comparisons have been made to the Holocaust and, not allowing Jewish refugees in. And, like, there is a Holocaust happening in Syria, and we have said no to them.
Yeah.
It's devastating.
Yeah, and it's just unnecessary, and it is, and some of these issues are complex, and sometimes I spend a lot of time talking to people, and I'm realizing that many people just, they just don't know some of the issues. So, like, a lot of people say, well, Muslims are violent. You can't deny that Muslims are violent. And then, I try to encourage them to realize that poverty creates despair, which results in higher violence. So if you look at all of the American prisoners in San Quentin, 95% of them grew up in abject poverty / abuse. And in the inner city or in countries in Africa, where there is poverty, there is bound to be more violence. And so it's not a Muslim issue.
No.
It's an issue that has to do with desperation. Haiti, I mean, you know the stuff.
Well, and there's also just inherent ignorance in, judging an entire people group based on the actions of a few, and especially when the few are extremists. I mean, we could by that measure say that Christians are all violent, or, pick a people group. Because we're going to, say someone did something and therefore they represent everyone, and it's completely ignorant. That is what prejudice is, judging judging a whole people group by the actions of a few. But I mean, thank goodness. I mean, it was heartening that was basically shut down.
Mm-hmm.
But the other topic that has, to me, been, as concerning as the Muslim ban is the government overreach. And that one I think is really interesting, and it plays into the Muslim ban because, it was basically shut down, and then he said to the Supreme or the courts that shut it down, I'll see you in court. Like, that was court. Court just, they work there. But, it's been interesting for me to watch as a former Republican, as someone raised Republican, like, the whole gist of the Republican Party is, like, staying away from big government, not letting government have too much reach or too much, and also, the whole vibe of conservatism is don't make too many changes too fast. Mm-hmm. And he's done both, which seem very un-Republican. And that's where, to me, he seems more fascist than a Republican.
And I know that there are good people that voted for Donald Trump.
I know. Yeah, but I don't think they understand.
Yeah, I don't understand. Right, exactly. And I think it is, we have become so polarized that as long as your candidate has an R, they could be for chopping up babies, Yeah. I mean, Trump even said it. I could shoot someone in Manhattan, shoot him in the face, and the people that follow me wouldn't even care. And there's a certain degree, he's onto something. Because the way that he's over-regulating businesses and the federal government getting in with some of these large corporations, I mean, that's totalitarian. That's what totalitarianism was like.
Yeah.
And yet the Trump supporters are like, hey, man, that's cool. There's not he's their guy, and so they're going to defend him no matter what. And that's kind of what I've seen. Though there is apparently, of the 100% of people that voted for Donald Trump, apparently there are about 10% of the people that barely voted for him. Like, they just were like, I hate Hillary, I gotta vote for someone, and maybe he'll do good. And so apparently he has utterly lost that group.
Sure.
And now the big battle for him is to see if he can win that constituency back.
So, I don't know how he could. I mean, he just seems so far gone and seems like such a hothead. But yeah, I mean, and then when you look at what's so interesting too is one of his big campaign promises was draining the swamp. Meaning, well, what was draining the swamp? That was his reference
his whole 18 months of campaigning was Washington insiders, politicians.
We're not going to give any more jobs to people who paid money
But the sad part with that, Kristen, is this. He was saying these things. It appealed to so many people, right? We're tired of politicians.
Right.
Well, you can't run a government without politicians. It's kind of like saying you're going to, start a steel factory, but you're not going to have any welders. And so, but his constituency thought, that's it, man. We want outsiders that aren't in Washington. 95% of the people that he's hired are insider politicians because you just can't have people that are untrained to come into those positions.
But Paul, the people untrained he put into the position
some of the higher.
Yeah, I mean, when he's veered away from the career politicians, he's put in donors or people. I mean, it's all been deals.
Deals.
DeVos basically purchased her post.
Yeah. But there is a certain, like, even with Trump, and I think about this often, right? So many people have said, we're so tired of these elitist, what was the word for them? Establishment, elitist politicians.
Right.
Donald Trump was the son of a multi-millionaire. He was born in privilege unlike anyone has ever been born into privilege.
Yeah.
He was educated at the best boarding schools on the East Coast. He has a bachelor's degree from an Ivy League college.
Yeah.
He lives in a tower made of gold in Manhattan. Yeah. Like, you don't get any more elite, and yet he somehow was able to sell his idea to working class folks that he's one of them.
Bizarre.
And that is bizarre because Hillary truly was from a middle class Midwestern home, and so there is just a weird spell upon many of the Trump supporters, and in the Christian community too. Like, well, he's a Christian. Well, he's not a Christian. I mean, you can call him a lot of things, but he's not a Christian.
No, he's not. And this is a bit of a diversion, but Rachel Held Evans had tweeted today, because people are up in arms about the new Beauty and the Beast movie, one of the characters, you know, is pining for another character of the same sex, and so people are like, it's the same, you know, it's a gay character in a Disney movie, boycott. But it's like, if you were okay voting for a guy who said grab them by the pussy, and yet you can't go see a movie that has a subtle gay reference, like, this isn't about morality. Mm-hmm. This is no longer about morality. You know, it's very bizarre, the double standard. But yeah, I mean, so we saw him immediately put into office Steve Bannon, who was one of the, to me, the scary aspects of his campaign, because Steve Bannon was head of Breitbart, which is 100% the kind of meeting place for the alt-right, which is a new iteration of white supremacy. Just, it is. Google it. And, you know, he's sitting kind of at the right hand of God. Steve Bannon is, and then he popped Jeff Sessions in to a cabinet appointment, who is also known for being too racist to be sworn in by Republicans and Democrats previously. So it's really scary who he's chosen.
Yeah.
So far.
And there have been some decent appointments.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. The National Security Advisor, forgot his name right now, but he's remarkably smart. He has a PhD. He does not want Trump to use the term radical Islam. He does not think we should have a ban. And so, you know, the whole balance of powers factor is definitely in play.
Yeah.
Andrea, I don't understand your question. I want to answer it, but I'm not quite sure what you mean by it. So if you can just like write it again, just a little bit shorter, I'd love to answer that. So and now we have some news scandals, of course. Kremlin Gate. This thing keeps. I mean, 3 weeks ago, I'm a big news junkie. I watch it, and 3 weeks ago they were saying, well, if we're talking about this in 2 or 3 days, you know, we'll know if it has wheels. Well, it's been 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, and the more revelations keep coming out.
Right.
The most recent being that Jeff Sessions apparently had met with 3, right? I think it was 3 different Russian, I guess it was ambassadors.
Yeah, there's their main ambassador to the U.S. But did you watch the hearing, the confirmation hearing of Sessions?
Oh, the confirmation hearing.
Yeah,
I did
just that little snippet.
Yes.
And I mean, he lied. There is no possible way. I'm a Republican. I would be happy to say the Democrats have it wrong. He lied.
He did.
It was a flat lie. He said he has not met with anyone, and he had met with. And then then they switched it and said, well, no, he meant he hadn't met with anyone in the capacity of being a Trump surrogate. But that's not what the question that Franken asked him. And so, lo and behold, he has to recuse himself from this investigation. But it just keeps getting weirder and weirder and weirder.
There is some clear connection there, and it's really scary. I don't know why more Republicans aren't panicking at this point. I mean, when you've got, you know...
I mean, what I see, like, on CNN, they have all the Republicans there always defending Trump, and they dig their heels in, but I think the wheels are loose, you know. I do think, you know, there are all these leaks that they can't even handle the amount of leaks coming out, and I think amongst the Trump supporters, I just don't hear many of them, you know, but he does have apparently 90% support amongst Republicans.
I don't believe it. I don't believe that. I really don't believe that. Okay, let's talk a bit about his attack on the press. I mean, when you look at, you know, the origins of a fascist or
that word. Yeah.
Why can I not say that?
Just fascism. It's fascism. It's nothing new. It's nothing new.
Totalitarian. It's not that hard. But anyway, if you look at the origins, I mean, you start with the press. You start with controlling information, and he is, you know, continually acting as if, you know, New York Times, CNN. I mean, not that they don't have some bias, but he's acting as if everything they say is fake.
Yeah, it's classic. It's classic, really, what he did during the campaign. It's classic ad hominem attack. Just attack the messenger.
Yeah.
It's what third graders do. You know.
Yeah.
Well, you're just a jerk.
Yeah.
And so, anytime something doesn't go his way, whether it's Meryl Streep, whether it's Hillary Clinton, or whether it's a news report, he attacks the messenger. Yeah. Knowing that it works. Yeah, knowing that there are certain people that aren't able to realize, wait a second, he's not sticking with the issues. He's just attacking somebody.
Right. Yeah.
But it seems like in the last couple of weeks that the press has swung back and maybe I'm just watching the wrong news channels, but it does seem he's just being hounded. Even yesterday, he was on a submarine, I think, somewhere, or in a destroyer, and he can't, by virtue of the job, there are going to be press around him, and so he can't just cloister himself off.
Well, he's trying.
He's trying.
He's trying. I mean, they've banned certain outlets from. Spicer has banned certain outlets from the the kind of Q&As, which is it's really scary. I mean, people should be frightened by that.
Yeah.
This attempt to control the flow of information, or and I mean, it's been so interesting to watch even the things that he gets real upset about, like he really wants people to know the margin of error between he and Hillary was smaller, and he really wants people to know that there was more people at the inauguration, and he's almost spinning around these topics more than other topics that he probably should be spending more time on.
Right.
And I think that points to his sort of narcissism and ego.
Right. There was a tweet today, which I think I reposted. I can't even believe. I mean, of course I can believe it because it's him, but he continues to. So, the tweet reads, it's Donald Trump tweeted this today. We should start an immediate investigation into Senator Schumer and his ties to Russia and Putin. A total hypocrite. And so it's so classic diversion.
It is.
So, does anyone care if Senator Schumer met with Russians? He wasn't running for president.
Right.
There is no one had to resign over it. There isn't an investigation. Nobody cares.
But you're right. It does work on some people, because I know people who are ardent Trump fans who will say, Schumer did it too. So, and the end. I mean, it's the same way that people were like, well, Hillary's emails, and are you going to say Hillary's emails until we can't travel outside the U.S.?
Yeah.
Our economy collapses.
Well, did you hear about the new
this?
email saga now?
Yes. No one's talking about that.
So, if you didn't know, apparently Mike Pence had a private email server while he was, of Indiana.
Yeah.
And now this thing's all over the news. And again, I don't care on one hand, but on another hand,
it's just of course you don't care. It's just the hypocrisy.
Right. And I'm a Republican,
Yeah.
but the Republicans, to me, they went so overboard on Hillary's emails. So overboard.
Yeah.
I mean, she blew it. She shouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
But she would have been a good president. I don't think she would have been a horrible president. I think Trump's dangerous. But they went so overboard, in my view. And the FBI, I think they would have prosecuted her if they had the evidence. They didn't.
would have. Yeah.
But whatever. It was old news. But now you find out that Mike Pence, who spent 12 months attacking Hillary for having a private email server, had a private email server with classified information on it. And so it's just, we live in a wacky world.
It is. It really feels like we have just moved away from truth and logic and reason. And it is just, it's sound bites, and it's really nuts.
So how do you think, how do we get back on track? So we have Trump, he'll be around for 4 years or 8 years, or he'll get impeached. I mean, do we ever return to more of a, there's always, I heard something recently, there's always been, I'm going to forget the words. There's always been division, but there's a difference between division and partisanship, right?
Mm-hmm,
So arguments have always gone on between the left, the various parties, but now there's just this exclusive demonization of the other party without even a willingness to compromise. And I just wonder, what do you guys think? Are we ever going to get out of this? Are we?
I don't know. It definitely seems to, that gap seems to be growing in terms of partisanship. And I have a friend whose grandfather was a senator for years and years, and then he was actually president for a bit. And, she talks about how, they would go into session and they would argue and be angry, and then they'd all go to dinner together.
Right.
And it was very peaceful. And, your politics were, a view that you held, but you were able to reach across the aisle and work together. And it just does seem to be getting worse and worse.
Yeah. And it seems like, well, it is the case that the biggest problem are just the silos now. Mm-hmm. You know what that means? Just like those big round things.
Yeah.
I know that's maybe a word that but just people live in their own worlds today. I don't.
Well, it's like the dogs that came out of surgery and they've got the cone on and
Right.
they can't see anything outside of their own periphery.
And so I was with someone last night and they were talking about, how they only watch Fox News, and then they were referring to this radio station here in Southern California, which is an AM right-wing radio station, and that's their source of radio. And I wanted to say, you should listen to NPR, because NPR, it tilts a little bit left, but they're always going to have the opposing sides speaking, and they're not just telling you what to think.
And it's not going to be a buffoon. The opposing party is going to be.
And you used to listen to Rush Limbaugh. I used to listen to Rush Limbaugh, but there are many people that just immerse themselves in news channels that just, it's confirmation bias. And I think until people start to realize, you know what, I'm all my friends, everything I listen to is just echoing the same exact thing. I don't know if there's any hope until more people start to jump out of that. And I know it happens on both sides.
And I will say, if there are people watching who go like, well, I don't know where to watch the news then, a great place to start if you really want nonpartisan is international news. Watch the BBC and see what they have to say about American politics. Al Jazeera is very interesting. The Young Turks, that's a YouTube channel. It's quippy and young and really interesting. But I think we have to get out of our silos, all of us. Sure.
Every Friday night, I'm religiously watching the PBS NewsHour, and they have my favorite two people, or certainly my favorite Republican, David Brooks, and he's very moderate, but it's just very balanced. It's not, there's no hype. It's very much, this is the news, this is what happened today. And I just think more and more people need to find places like that. I watch Fox sometimes because I sometimes think I'm slipping too far over, and I'll watch, some of what goes on there.
Although I have to say, I have watched Fox a few times, and I think that the honeymoon's over with Fox and Trump. I mean, I'm seeing them really being critical. I think there's only so far as a journalist you can go without going, wait a minute. And I'm sure it's not every program on Fox, but I've certainly seen some folks on Fox News just starting to take Trump to task.
Right.
Which is interesting. All right, well, we are going to try to resume our political conversations because we just feel like there's so much going on and so much
Today
interest.
was a potpourri, but we want to
it was, but we want to continue talking about it. We want to add in, and we'd love to hear from you guys. You can leave a comment on what you want to hear more about. Paul and I are pretty passionate about social justice. We're pretty passionate about racial reconciliation, but also religious reconciliation, especially between the Christian and Muslim community. But let us know what you guys like to hear about. Do you want to hear more about kind of the intersection of faith and politics? Do you want to hear us talk a little bit more about maybe the definitions of the different sides? Are we on Trump watch and we're just talking about what he did that week?
Trump watch, that'd be good.
Right. But anyway, we do want to resume doing this. We'll probably do it once a week, for once a week. Loosely, like we always did before. But anyway, so thanks for watching, but leave a comment and tell us what you want to hear more about.
See you then.
Bye.